Welcome to the Biopunk kingdom. My name is Sofia Sanchez, and in this episode, I have interviewed Gigi Minsky, the co-founder and CEO of Senseory, a startup that is designing, engineering, and growing new scented plants. In last episode, we talked about the floral dictionaries and how people used to use them in the Victorian era to express secrets, and they used to assign meaning to a particular flower. Then that's always been the case for a lot of biology, right? In many different cultures. Like, come on, even the Chinese horoscope, right, has animals that we assign certain characteristics and beliefs and values to. So what if we expanded across the tree of life and in fact grew the tree of life itself to create new meaning and to tell new stories? I'm actually very glad that I have their scent here. Oh my gosh, the first time that I smelled it, and I include part of that in the episode that's coming, I couldn't believe it. It smells just like a forest, and it reminds me of Christmas, basically like a Christmas shop. It's wonderful. Because when I was a teenager and I was just learning about synthetic biology, one of my wildest dreams was to actually touch these products. I think this is what this new wave of startups and people are doing. As I mentioned in one of my favorite posts ever that I've written, Poets of Living Objects, it's now no longer about using the organism as a factory, but about giving the organism the opportunity to be a new medium for expression, to express our feelings, even to think of it as art. So I know that all of this has sounded very artistic so far. However, in the episode, we do dive into Gigi's story as a biotechnologist, how she learned about scientific product development at places like Ginkgo Bioworks, MycoWorks in the Bay Area, and also what her strategy currently is for Senseory as a business, who she thinks of as her customers, how she is iterating on the product based on feedback. Because for me, it was something incredibly abstract, thinking about perfumes and scents, like how do you even define that, how do you even understand that in the minds of consumers? So this interview was also very informative in terms of that. And one of the most important learnings actually from here is how not only is it that we are finding new capabilities for the biology, but how we are arriving to these conclusions, because we are no longer only spinning off startups out of academia with, that end up being just traditional pharma or agriculture businesses, which are obviously super important for civilization. But again, I'm talking about consumer biology. I'm talking about artistic biology, poetry of living objects, if you will. For this, they're collaborating actually with someone who has been outside of traditional academic environments, a biohacker who has been basically genetically modifying plants and tissue culturing them in his house. So he is both an artist, a scientist. His name is Sebastian Kozioba, and I hope to have him on the show soon as well. Please don't forget to subscribe, as I have recorded a lot more in-person episodes, and I'm very excited to share with you these stories. Without further ado, let's go.
Scent and olfaction and perfume was really my foray into science and technology. When I was, 5 years old, I actually started making my first perfumes. So I distinctly remember, predating my first perfume kit, going to my mom's dresser and finding her vintage perfumes, her Shalimar and her Opium, and unbottling them and mixing them together, much to her dismay, and seeing, what new creations and what olfactory, memories I could make with those. And that prompted my parents to buy me my first DIY perfume kit. And
Wow.
So for years, I would make new mixtures, and these were just with very simple essential oils, but playing with sandalwood and rose. And I would give them as gifts to my family. And my family actually consists of many perfume aficionados as well. My grandmother has collected over 200 vintage perfumes, and I recently learned that my great-grandmother, who I never met, was a pharmacist by training, but transferred into perfume making and perfumery in her later life. Yeah, we actually we found a bottle of some of her unfinished perfume, which was amazing for me to smell. I didn't bring it today, but I have it with me at home.
And what is it about perfumes? Do you think there's something you perceive differently compared to other people?
To me, I've definitely always been very sensitive, and particularly so my mom, who got me into perfume and perfume making as a way to experience the world and science and technology, she actually lost her sense of smell to 3 different brain tumors when I was in high school. And I remember around that time realizing, you know, though we were grateful that she still retained many of her other senses, this was still a big loss. So I felt like my sense of smell and my love for scents grew even stronger. So I started collecting, and while I transitioned into working on biomaterials and synthetic biology, I never lost sight of how important scent and perfume is to memories and time. So I've curated an enormous collection over the past 15 years or so. So it's just, perfumes are almost like little vials of memories. So.
I like that.
Yeah.
Transitioning into your previous experiences in biotech, you've been everywhere from Microworks, Ginkgo. Yeah. Is there a particular experience that stands out to you, maybe the place where you've learned the most, or you just like the technology over something else? Yeah.
It's a great question, and all of my experiences have absolutely shaped my journey where I am today and what I've learned. And I'll tell you about a few key experiences at all of those places and all those key places. So I was lucky enough to intern at Ginkgo Bioworks the summer of 2016. I got to share an office with Tom, who's like family, and that was just really wonderful. And at the time, I was just learning to be in a lab, so how to pour plates and how to function in the lab. But that was at the stage when Ginkgo was actually, I believe, starting to work on their extinct flower, what is now Future Society, that project. And that is really what inspired me and showed me that studying biology could take you to more than medical school or medical research, which is amazing, but I always kind of had that knack for creation and artistry, and that's where I really saw all of the promise of synthetic biology. So with that experience under my belt, that inspiration, I went to college at UC Santa Barbara, and I studied in the College of Creative Studies, which was a program where you could actually form your own major. Cool. And so they did not have a bioengineering major at the time, so I picked and chose classes from all different departments to really kind of hone in my synthetic biology training while actually working in an evolutionary biology lab studying bioluminescence. So I always followed what I found beautiful, and no one was working on scent at the time, but it was always something I continued to collect and do on my own. After college, I started at Microworks, and I was semi-early R&D there, and the people there that I met, the artists, designers, and scientists, and learning how to work in an early stage startup, in an earlier stage than Ginkgo had been, was also just like priceless. It's something I carry with me today, and how I operate, and how I've built my team, and yeah, it's been absolutely monumental. At Checkerspot, which I worked at after Microworks and previous to Senseory, that was where I worked with microalgae for the first time. And at Checkerspot, we were producing alternatives to petroleum-based materials using oil from microalgae. And it was at that time that I started to really dive back into scent creation as opposed to collection. And I realized that the oil that we were making would serve as a sustainable carrier oil for fragrance. So I just tinkered around at home with a little vial of that oil, and I made an algae-based perfume.
Wow.
And I should have brought it, but I also, Checkerspot made this amazing kit to make objects out of their algal-based polyurethane, and I actually made a perfume bottle. I have a picture, I can show it to you.
Sure.
Yeah. So all of those experiences, the people I met, and one of the most important people I met in my undergrad is actually my co-founder, Sarah Seagrave, who's our CTO. I met her almost immediately after Ginkgo and shared my experience with her, and we always knew we wanted to start a company together. She was my first research mentor in undergrad.
Very cool.
So it's been amazing to come full circle with that.
I wouldn't have imagined that Ecovative had this sort of interdisciplinary team. You mentioned designers and artists and scientists, or maybe you've seen that even at Ginkgo with their creative residency, or some of their more creative efforts.
Yeah.
How are you thinking of building that kind of team for something? Well, yeah, for sure, like a product that I imagine goes beyond the science.
Absolutely, it's vital to understanding consumer biology, which is really what we're doing, because all of those people that you mentioned, scientists, artists, designers, in the end play a part in the user experience of the product we're putting forward. And in terms of synthetic biology at the core of it, of course the technology needs to work and be honed in on and be reproducible, and that's a hugely important part of onboarding all of the scientists that are needed for a biotech company. But the roles of these artists and designers should definitely not be looked over, because they really dictate, how people are going to love and interact with the product at the end of the day. And so when I'm thinking about our team, we're small, and we're all, scientists and have science backgrounds. I'm lucky enough to have been working for the past year to support myself during the startup at helping out at a niche perfumery in San Francisco, where I've learned the business. And so I've learned a lot about what it takes to literally develop and produce a fragrance product. So that is everything from the design of the bottle to the feel that people get when they use the atomizer. All of these things, these product-focused, aspects, definitely need to be taken into consideration while building your technology, because it really, at the end of the day, is going to be a wow product for people. And fragrance in particular is a ritual for so many. And so having that honed down is really important.
In this case, you're not, I would suppose at the beginning at least, have a bottle for your product, because the product itself is the plant. So tell us about before the product. What's the story of Senseory itself?
Absolutely, it's a great question. Yeah, so the origin story of Senseory, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what that product is going to look like.
Sure.
It came from actually a simple sounding question that is actually quite complex and has a series of complex secondary questions and answers. So Sarah Seagrave, my co-founder, and I, we, like I mentioned, have always wanted to start a company together. So we have tossed around tons of ideas about what that could look like. And one day, especially as I was getting more and more ingrained in the fragrance industry and identifying problems with sustainability and scents that people really know and love, Sarah simply asked, why not make a houseplant do the same thing as a candle? What if your houseplant smelled like a lavender field? And we smiled and thought about the magic of that, and then said, hey, we're in this field, let's make it happen. And it really cascaded from that question. So the first thing we did was reach out to subject matter experts in the field, so people who had done scent engineering in flowering plants, or identified key fragrance genes, plant metabolic engineers. And to our luck and surprise, as first-time founders, the idea really inspired a lot of people to get involved. So we were lucky enough to have great advisors, helping build our confidence and our product and our team in the early days. So that really started to build a framework for what Senseory is today. And we've been at it for about a year and a half. And today the main core team is Sarah, Sebastian, and I. And in terms of your question about what is that product going to look like, how is it going to differ from a current solution for fine fragrance or home fragrance, we actually have 2 products in the pipeline. So I'll share a little bit about what we're going to be working on first. And this is actually going to be a soil microbe plant probiotic additive that creates a beautiful aromatic fragrance. And the first fragrance we're working with is actually the scent after rain. So this is typically known as petrichor. It's a molecule called geosmin, and it's ubiquitous in nature, and humans can smell it 20 times stronger than sharks can smell blood in the water. It's incredibly primal and serves a lot of benefit to mood and well-being. When we first showed our prototype of our microbe, which occurs naturally, and added it to our plant, and we showed my grandmother, who's actually from India, without any prompting, she said, this smells like the first monsoon after rain. And that took her back to a key memory that was unlocked through this fragrance. And that's when we really realized that this idea of place and time through fragrance, like the fresh scent after rain, hits home with so many people. Yeah. And we learned that from talking to consumers over the past year about what they actually want in a fragrance product. So that product will come in a similar fashion to what you might, light a candle with. It's not the same machinery, but it's going to be something that you can interact with and use and add to your plant, and it's going to be a living fragrance. The second product, and it's what we're working to do and developing the framework and resources to do, is actually engineering the scent through the leaves of the plant as well. So that's it's
step two,
from microbe to plant. Yeah, and we all know about the challenges of getting there, and so that's really the framework I have an example of the fragrance molecules that we're working with here, and then I can share you a video of people experiencing the plant too.
Sure.
Would you like to spray it on?
Maybe.
You want to spray it on me?
Yeah. Oh, maybe on you, and maybe we can do both.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is a mock-up that we made using the molecules that we're working with a perfumer. I don't know if you can kind of see outdoors in forest bathing. Yeah.
You know what? It also, for some reason, maybe some shop has used it in the past. It reminds me a bit of Christmas shops.
A little bit of that pine.
Yeah, pine, yeah.
So the class of molecules that we're going to be working with, many of them do comprise scents like pine. They were looking for really they're called sesquiterpenes, and they are complex terpenoids that are found in woody fragrances and just your favorite fragrances from the forest, essentially. Right. That's kind of what we're going for. And I'd love to show you a video. So for the past few months, we've actually showcased our microbiome product around, and I have this video right here.
Oh my God, it's so good. I really love it. Oh, I love it.
What are some of the challenges for engineering the scent into the plant, and meaning technical challenges, of course? Yeah. Something that I had read a little bit about is that some of these fragrance molecules might not be super duper characterized, might be in very low amounts, or even when you engineer them into the plant, you might be able to detect them, but not necessarily see, or in this case, smell the final scent itself in the plant.
Absolutely. Those are great questions. I wish my technical team was here today because they're rock stars, so I'll try and do it justice. There are a number of interesting challenges there, from microbe to molecule. So with the system that we're engineering, there are different constraints that we have to consider, from is there a protocol to even transform the thing, to, does the plant have structures to emit the fragrance, right? With the molecules, there's something called an odor detection threshold, which actually, that's something we look at for every scent we're interested in. So the first thing we'll do in our design process is usually start from the consumer and say, well, what do they like? Because at the end of the day, that's what the most important thing is, right? But the next thing we have to then talk about is, what are the engineering constraints here? So we'll look at odor detection threshold, the volatility, so exactly what you said, even if you can detect it with a GCMS, is it, emerging from the plant in a way that will fill up a room? Yeah. There's, exactly, characterization of both the molecules and the system, microbe and plant, are all things we take into consideration, but luckily I have the best technical team out there to tackle the job. Yeah.
Can you share what plants you're looking at right now, or plant?
Yeah, so one of the first plants we are looking at is the petunia. It's become sort of almost rebranded as a houseplant just due to those engineering constraints, the glowing petunia from Light Bio, and it's there for us to work with. We do have another series of plants we're looking at, but I won't share those today. But definitely the petunia is one that we're looking at to transform the scent.
Cool. How far does the biology go in terms of, I don't know if I'll be able to actually perceive the fragrance, like if I'm standing 5 meters in front of the plant, or if I'll have to go and smell it in a very proximity.
That's a great question. We're in the process of doing both persistence and longevity studies. It's actually cool to think about it in this way, because in the fragrance world, some of the key criteria to personal fragrance is projection, a term called sillage, which is how long the fragrance will linger in a space, and then longevity, so how long it will last on the skin. In home fragrance, it's sort of similar. It's how long, will it fill up a room in a certain amount of time? How long will that last? Will I become nose blind to it? So what we've noticed with our product is that there is the promise of filling up a space as well, very fast, as well as longevity. But right now we're hashing out exactly, those metrics so we can best deliver our product.
Is this a technology you're licensing from a specific lab, or you're developing it from scratch, basically?
We are developing it from scratch. We've been very lucky with the team and the resources we have to actually, we filed our first utility patent this past summer, and it's not affiliated with any specific lab or university. So
cool. I know you're working with Sebastian on that, and I think over the years he's built this awesome reputation as the plant biohacker, synthetic biologist, amateur scientist. How is it like working with someone who has pretty much been out of academia this whole time?
It's been amazing. It felt like a perfect fit from the moment that we were introduced to him. And he is just so brilliant, so focused, and provides new ideas all the time. And the relationship that the team has together in terms of determining what is best for business focus, but also like maintaining that ability to dream big and think of out of the box ideas. That's been a great balance with him. And I mean, you wouldn't have guessed, he's been out of academia. He really is just stellar at what he's done. So
yeah, I know. And because of that, I also wonder if there are, well, of course you maybe haven't, we haven't A/B tested this, but how it is like to work with him as, someone who might be more out of the box versus someone who might be more into academia and so on.
Well, that's a great, actually, so my co-founder, Sarah, is, she's a PhD candidate, and so she's currently in academia. And it's great to have I wouldn't even call it a contrast because it's almost complementary, but what academia does train people to do, combined with Sebastian's real world knowledge and what he's trained has allowed us to really flourish. So I do think the two are complementary as opposed to, contrasting.
One aspect that he cares a lot about is open sourcing, at least part of what he builds. How has that worked for you? How have you basically come to an agreement in terms of that?
That's a great question. It's really just comes down to things that he works on for Senseory, which are very clear, clearly IP-based, stay that way. But there are, let's say, intermediary either methods or aspects of, tangential to what he's building that we always have a conversation about it and determine, what is meant to be company proprietary and what is open source. And it just really comes down to a good conversation about it and agreement upon what can be, because we want to honor his ethos towards that as well, and make sure that he continues, producing for the masses in that way.
Had you looked for other synthetic biologists to work with? Was that maybe a challenge? Because I've seen some, plant adjacent biotech startups that sometimes that's a challenge for them, not because there are not enough plant synthetic biologists out there, but because many of them are, let's say, a little bit skeptical of these kind of new products.
Yes, yeah, so it's a great question. Honestly, Sebastian was just such a lucky find, combined with the fact that I had been familiar with his work in general, and how quickly he understood the mission. He just was the perfect fit in that sense. So we're looking forward to growing with plant engineers in the future once we can scale, but he's great to start the foundation with and build with. So
very cool.
Yeah.
You're focusing on consumers first. Are you gonna start as a B2C or?
Yeah,
okay.
That's a great question. So fascinatingly, over the past few months with our displays and our showcases, we've gotten traction from businesses like luxury hotels who are very interested in our product, and that's something we are super excited about. And we're working to understand the market a little bit more because, for the past year and a half, we did do our main customer discovery with consumers. few different types. So houseplant buyers, fine fragrance purchasers, interior designers, and that one's a little interesting because they work for a business, but we actually received a letter of intent from one too who works at a firm, which was great. But the talks with actual luxury spaces, indoor spaces to deploy at scale is really appealing to us, and we see a very, profitable route in that direction. And it's something we're working to understand a little bit more, but that's who we would really want to serve. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's what I imagined I would kind of see. It's just very easy to think of, someone arriving at a luxury hotel and kind of smelling that plant, and then potentially, gaining this association, or just like getting into the minds of people and the consumers, getting the word out there, getting the product out there, and then going B2C maybe?
Absolutely. So we recognize the pros and cons of building and maintaining a D2C brand, and what's great about businesses is that they're really focused on place and time, and that's what we're really honing in on for our scents as well. And so a signature scent associated with a hotel is huge for their brand and for people to experience and remember it by. So that's something we're really excited about as well. We would obviously love to see sensory plants and sensory products in people's homes and people using them, and that's something we're hashing out along the way about how we would deliver to these segments.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you must know this better than anyone else. Hotels have this whole, what do they call it, like fragrance engineering?
Yes, they do. Yeah. They do, and it's great that you actually know that, because as a scent obsessed as I am, that's one of the first things I learned along this way was a hotel will literally have a fragrance engineering team that consists of psychologists, perfumer, like
crazy,
everyone around. I mean, it's a real market, and so that's something we're definitely really excited about with our product.
In that sense, how do you? What do your consumer research adventures look like? Because how can you ask people about the smell? What are the types of questions you ask, or what is the type of feedback you get?
Absolutely. So to start off the journey, Sarah and I participated in the NSF iCore program, which was great, and there we kind of just started asking people who were at houseplant stores or fine fragrance establishments, or people like cold messaging people who worked in that interior design, hospitality industry. And we were very lucky with my connection to the perfumery that we had, direct interactions with people buying high-end luxury products. And we actually learned a lot about the consumer from those experiences, which I'll get to in just a minute. But one of the next stages of customer discovery we were able to do is launch at events. So Synbio Beta, we did an event in Miami in October, and then we did an event in San Francisco recently as well. And that was great because we were able to talk to them about types of scents and see their experience with the product. And what we identified is that there's sort of this product really is this sort of luxurious feel, luxurious experience, and there's two types of, excluding the businesses, sort of buyers that we're starting to see appear. There's those who really are excited about the fact that what we're producing is non-toxic and sustainable, and that's really important to them. And that's the first thing that's the most important to them. And then there's the other buyer who that matters to them, but what even matters more is that this is the next frontier of fragrance. So like they want to buy the next coolest thing, and they're always looking for something sort of new to add to their fragrance experience. So that's been interesting as well to get to know that through these experiences.
How do you see Senseory in the next 5 years?
We are long gaming. We are so excited to grow and to build and to just create a greener, great smelling future. One of the biggest milestones for Q1 of 2025 is we'll be actually setting up, in parallel to Sebastian's lab, a space incubating at the California Nanosystems Institute. It's a joint incubator between UC Santa Barbara and UCLA. So we're excited to grow in that sense and have a space to call home.
That's very cool.
And
yeah, congrats. Amazing.
Yeah.
Anything you'd recommend to the next generation of synthetic biologists, especially those who want to start consumer companies?
Absolutely. I would say, this sounds very much like common sense, but trust your gut. I think back to some key moments in my journey where I had to come to making decisions between two things. And I think about my first job out of college at MicroWorks versus the other positions I was offered. And I know that I would have made the best out of what I was doing because I was following, what I found beautiful and interesting, but I trusted my gut at that moment, and I made the right choice. I'd say nurture your relationships. Relationships are some of the best things you can keep, throughout all of your experiences and journeys. I just caught up with former coworkers this morning from both companies, and that's been an amazing part of the journey. And yeah, reach out to your network. Don't be afraid, and dream big.